This is Jake with Stay Cool Climate Control. Today we're at this house doing a HVAC system inspection. Basically, the homeowner selling this property, they had an inspection done. Then, the inspector came out, took a look at the system, highlighted a few different things. So that's why he gave us a call. We're coming out here to take a look at those, provide solutions, and see if we find any of the things that are going to cause problems with the system in the future. Okay, so one of the first things that the inspector highlighted for us is the flue right here. As you can see, it's got a big old crack in it from when it's rusted through. This flue pipe essentially acts as an exhaust for the furnace. So all the flue gases that are produced, things like carbon monoxide, get vented up and out of this pipe and then out of the house. So when you have structural compromisation right here like this, it creates a risk of that carbon monoxide leaking into the house, making it not safe to run the furnace. So definitely gonna need to get fixed before this house is ready to sell. Next part for this flue, for the water heater right here, this section is made of aluminum piping, which back in the day used to be fine, but more recent codes want you to use 26 gauge galvanized steel like this pipe. Aluminum just lacks that rigidity that they want for the code. So we're gonna have to get that replaced as well. And so another thing that the inspector highlighted for us is this gas line for the furnace. You can see inside the cabinet here, they have the union and the shutoff both in here. It's not allowed, it's gotta be outside the cabinet because this union is a unsealed section of the gas line. It's there to be opened so that you can work on the gas line. And back in the day, they didn't care if it was in the cabinet, but recently they changed the code that requires it to be outside because if someone were to open this union and then, not close it up all the way, leave it cracked, it's gonna leak a little bit of gas, and this is right where combustion happens. So it can cause a few issues, small fires, things like that. So, prevent that, it's gotta be outside the cabinet. So right now is the first step of the HVAC system inspection. We're starting with the heat. We're basically gonna go through our full checklist. First thing we like to do is we always like to get a temperature rise. Basically, we slide our thermometers into the ductwork like this, and we're taking the temperature of our return air and our supply air. We're gonna subtract the difference, and then that's gonna give us our temperature rise. It's basically a good standard indicator of how well the furnace is operating. Right now we're checking the static pressure of the system. Static pressure is basically a measurement of the friction of air. So we're measuring how much resistance the air is receiving as it travels through the furnace. So you have your blower down here, your heat exchanger, and your evaporator coil. By taking the static pressure, we can determine that air is moving at a good flow rate and making sure that there's not any restrictions or things that are going to prevent it from getting up to the home where it needs to be. So pretty much most systems require a static pressure of around 0.5 or 0.6 maximum. This one's a little bit high, so most likely it has some kind of restriction, either a dirty filter, small ductwork, dirty coil, it could be several things. I would say that's pretty dirty, so that's probably where our restriction is going to be. When you have a dirty filter like this, it's going to restrict all that airflow, making the motor work harder. It's going to make sure everything's running hotter. It can cause damage to the heat exchanger, to the furnace, any electrical components. That's why changing your filter is so important. So after taking a look at this humidifier, we're doing our standard checks on it, pretty much trying to turn it on. Nothing happens, and you can check. You can feel this solenoid is super duper hot from the coil in there trying to open, but it's locked up. We can even check with an amp draw. You can see it's pulling pretty high amps for a solenoid, so it's locked up tight. It's not gonna let any water through. That solenoid is bad. So while doing our furnace inspection, noticed a few different symptoms of issues with the heat exchanger. Those being that the temperature rise was very high. The flames were flickering orange. So, we decided to get in here and take a look at the heat exchanger. This furnace is from 2011, so it's about 14 years old as well. The longer, a furnace has been around, the more prone it is to having these issues. So, we opened the back panel up here and we're gonna take a look at this heat exchanger and see if it's got any cracks, any rusting, hot spots, see if there's any problems with it. So we got done taking a look at the heat exchanger, and it does have some hot spots on it, just sections of the metal where it's heated up a lot over time, which is perfectly normal for a 14-year-old furnace. Didn't find any cracks or holes or spots that are rusted through, so this heat exchanger looks safe. We got everything on this furnace checked out. So the last step in the furnace inspection process is just a quick cleaning. We're gonna get all this dust, debris, dead bugs, anything that we don't want in the furnace. We're gonna get it out of there. So that way it's looking nice. So we're all finished up with the furnace inspection. So next we're moving on to the AC. Now, normally when you think of the air conditioner, you think of the big, outside unit with the fan spinning, it's real loud, but the system actually all works as one whole. The fan that distributes all the air and actually carries that cool air into the house is all part of the furnace. So that's where we start our inspection. We check a lot of the same things that we check with the furnace. We check our temperature drop, all of our components, make sure the air is working good. This system right now is actually not cooling great, so we're definitely gonna wanna get some gauges on it and kind of see what's going on. So next part of the inspection is gonna be checking out the outside unit. This is where a lot of important components are, your compressor, fan motor. All your refrigerant gets pumped through here. It's basically the heart of the system, so it's important to get it checked out and get it cleaned. Obviously you can tell this unit's not been very well loved in the past few years, so we're finally gonna give her some of the love she deserves. So the last thing the inspector highlighted for us, he was talking about this insulation out here. It goes on the suction line, which is the line taking the refrigerant to the compressor. So this line often gets really cold. So pretty much if it's not insulated properly, you're gonna have water issues. Condensation will form on it. It can drip and mess up your carpets, your drywall, things you don't want. So you want it to be insulated completely from the outside all the way inside. Okay, so the last part of our inspection, we're putting some gauges on it because it was having some issues cooling, and we definitely found the cause of our issue. It basically has very little refrigerant in it. This is most likely because there's a leak in it somewhere. So with it being 22 years old, it uses the outdated refrigerant they don't manufacture. So this unit working is going to be a bit of a challenge. Okay, so we're all finished up with the furnace and AC inspection. We got the full HVAC system checked out. We definitely noticed a few things, a couple things the inspector highlighted. So it's going to need some work, but we're going to go ahead and talk to the customer, recommend those repairs, and see what he wants done.